The silence came first. It was not the gentle hush of twilight that Kashinath knew, the soft blanket that settled over his hermitage as the sun bled into the western mountains. This was a different kind of quiet, a predatory, absolute silence. The river Saraswati, his constant companion for 3 centuries, a babbling witness to his meditations, had ceased its flow. Not slowed, not trickled. It had simply stopped, its surface a sheet of impossible, unmoving glass. The chirping of the crickets, the rustle of leaves in the ancient banyan tree, all of it gone. The universe had drawn a breath and held it. Kashinath's eyes, closed in deep contemplation, fluttered open. He was an old man, his skin the texture of dried parchment, his beard a river of white cascading over his chest. But his senses were sharper than any youth's. They were attuned to the subtle currents of the cosmos, the prana that flowed through all things. And that flow was stagnating. A vibration began not in the earth but in the marrow of his bones. It was a low, sub-audible hum that resonated with the very atoms of his being. On the small, beaten copper plate beside his prayer mat, the offering of water shivered. Its surface, once placid, now erupted in a silent, intricate dance of its own. Cladni figures, patterns of impossible sacred geometry, formed and dissolved in the trembling liquid. It was a language he had only read of in the most arcane texts, the grammar of cosmic dissolution. The air grew thin, sharp. It carried a scent he had never before encountered, yet recognized with a primal part of his soul the smell of ozone from a star's death scream, the metallic tang of time itself being rent, and the faint, sweet fragrance of lotuses blooming in a world yet to be born. This was not an earthquake. It was not a storm. Earthquakes were a planetary complaint. Storms were the sky's tantrum. This was a tremor in the fabric of reality itself. A thread was being pulled, and the grand, ancient tapestry of the yugas was beginning to unravel. Kashinath placed a trembling hand on the packed earth of his hut. The ground felt taut, like the skin of a drum stretched to its breaking point. He did not feel fear, not yet. He felt a profound and terrifying awe. The whispers, the omens, the slow decay of Dharma he had witnessed for 100 lifetimes, it had all been a prelude. The final verse of a long, tired song was ending, and a new rhythm was about to begin. For generations, Kashinath had felt the universe growing heavy. He had watched it from his seclusion, a physician taking the pulse of a dying patient. The ailment was a subtle poison arrogance. It had started in the celestial realms of the Devas. Indra, drunk on the power of his thunderbolt and the echoes of his own hollow praise, had begun to see his position not as a sacred duty, but as a birthright. The other gods had followed suit. Their boons became transactions, their blessings conditional. They had forgotten that they were merely custodians of cosmic law, not its authors. This spiritual malaise had trickled down, seeping into the world of men. Prayers became rote recitations, devoid of devotion. Rituals, once vibrant acts that aligned the mortal with the divine, were now empty gestures performed for material gain. Kings built temples not to honor the gods, but to immortalize their own names in stone. Dharma, the righteous path, had become a tangled, overgrown trail, obscured by the weeds of greed and ego. The universe felt sluggish, its spiritual arteries clogged. It was tired. The cosmic breath had grown shallow, the great cycle of birth and death laboring under the weight of accumulated karma. Kashinath remembered the stories passed down from his own guru, who had heard them from his 1,000 years prior, whispers of a time when the world would become so enamored with its own reflection that it would forget the source of the light, when the illusion, the Maya, became so convincing that it was mistaken for reality. When the cosmos forgets its own song, his master had said, his voice like the grinding of stones, the singer will fall silent, and the dancer will awaken. Brahma, the creator, the singer of the cosmic song, had grown quiet. His creative impulse was stifled, for what newness could be born into a world so full of its own clutter? Vishnu, the preserver, struggled to maintain a balance that was tipping irrevocably toward decay. He was a divine dam holding back a flood of entropy, and the cracks were beginning to show. Kashinath had seen them. He had seen a river flow backward for a day. He had seen a child born with the eyes of an ancient, weary man. He had seen stars flicker and die in the sky, their light extinguished long before their time. The coming storm was not a punishment. Kashinath understood this with a clarity that chilled him. It was a mercy. It was the cauterizing fire of a surgeon, burning away the disease so that the body could heal. The emotional stake was a paradox that tore at his heart. He loved this world, every flawed, beautiful particle of it, the scent of the first rain on parched earth, the unwavering loyalty in a dog's eyes, the taste of a mango ripened in the sun. To save it, all of it had to be annihilated. His own existence, his memories, his centuries of penance and wisdom all were just dust motes in the house that was about to be swept clean. He bowed his head, a single tear tracing a path through the ash on his cheek. It was a tear not of sorrow, but of farewell. The hum intensified, graduating from a feeling in the bones to a sound that filled the world. It was a deep, resonant thrumming, the sound of a string being plucked on an instrument the size of a galaxy. The ground beneath Kashinath was no longer earth, it was a membrane, a living skin vibrating with an imminent, colossal rhythm. The beat had begun. Daha, daha, da. He stumbled out of his hut. The sky was no longer the familiar indigo of dusk. It was a bruised purple, and the stars, his celestial guides, were not twinkling, they were shuddering. Constellations, fixed in their divine pattern since the dawn of time, were being shaken loose. Saptarishi, the 7 sages immortalized in the heavens, quivered as if in a fever. Dhruva, the steadfast pole star, wavered in its place. It was like watching the stitches of reality pop, one by one. The great banyan tree, a silent patriarch that had shaded his hermitage for 1,000 years, began to tremble. In a sudden, violent spasm, it shed its leaves, not the gentle, spiraling descent of autumn, but a convulsive explosion. A storm of green rained down, but the leaves turned to gray ash before they touched the ground, disintegrating in the supercharged air. The tree stood naked, its ancient limbs stark and skeletal against the terrifying sky. From the forest came a sound of pure, instinctual terror. But the animals were not fleeing. Kashinath saw them at the edge of the clearing, a tiger, a deer, a family of monkeys. They stood frozen, muscles locked, heads bowed not in reverence but in abject surrender to a power so overwhelming it paralyzed the will. The ancient enmity between predator and prey was forgotten, erased by a greater, shared dread. The very laws of nature were fraying. The Saraswati, its flow still arrested, began to steam. The water was not boiling, but sublimating, turning directly from liquid to a shimmering vapor that hung in the air like a ghost. Kashina felt his own body thrumming in sympathy with the cosmic beat. His physical form, the vessel that had carried him through ages, felt porous, insubstantial. The lines between his skin and the air blurred. The beat was growing faster, louder. It was no longer just a sound, it was the rhythm of a heartbeat, a universe-spanning heart that was beginning to race, driving the cosmos toward a final, ecstatic, terrible crescendo. He could feel it in the hollow of his chest, a syncopated percussion that was pulling his own life force into its cadence. Dah 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 dan da. The ankle bells of the god were approaching. The sky did not break with light, it tore. A rent appeared in the fabric of the heavens, a wound of absolute non-being, blacker than any physical darkness. It was a void that consumed light, a silence that consumed sound, and from that tear in reality he emerged. Kashinath did not see him with his mortal eyes. They were useless, streaming with tears that evaporated as they fell. He saw him with his soul, an image burned directly onto his consciousness, Shiva, Nataraja, the lord of the dance. He was a paradox of scale, both infinitesimally small and infinitely vast, contained within the void yet filling all of existence. His form was a storm of divine energy, terrifying and beautiful. One foot was planted firmly, not on the ground, for there was no ground, but on the back of a writhing dwarf-like figure. Apasmara, the demon of ignorance and ego, the embodiment of the weary, forgetful universe. The demon squirmed, but could not escape the crushing, graceful weight. His other leg was raised, bent at the knee, frozen in an arc of sublime power, a gesture that held the balance of the 3 worlds. His body, smeared with sacred ash, swayed with a rhythm that was both utterly chaotic and perfectly precise. He had 4 arms, each a blur of cosmic purpose. In his upper right hand, he held a small, hourglass-shaped drum, the Damaru. With every flick of his wrist, it pulsed. Dum. A universe flared into existence, a maelstrom of birthing suns, coalescing planets, and the first whisper of life. Dum. Another pulse, and a different universe collapsed into a singularity, its time run out, its story told. Creation and destruction, heartbeat by heartbeat, born from a simple rhythm. In his upper left hand, a tongue of flame, Agni, licked at the void. It was the fire that consumes all, the ultimate purifier. It did not radiate heat, it radiated finality. It was the fire that burns away illusion, karma, and form itself, reducing the gross to the subtle, matter to pure spirit. His lower right hand was raised in the Abhaya Mudra, the gesture of fearlessness. Do not be afraid, it seemed to say, even as reality dissolved into primordial chaos. This too is my grace. His lower left arm swept across his chest, his hand pointing to his raised foot, the symbol of liberation, of moksha. But it was his face that held Kashinath captive. It was a mask of perfect serenity, of divine detachment. His third eye, the eye of wisdom, was a slit of unbearable light in the center of his forehead. His lips were curved in a gentle, enigmatic smile, the smile of one who is watching a play of his own making. There was no anger here, no wrath, only a profound, focused bliss. Ananda, his matted locks, the jadas usually coiled atop his head, had come undone. They whipped through the void like fiery serpents, striking the shuddering constellations. With each lash, galaxies shattered, exploding into clouds of incandescent dust. Stars were snuffed out like candles in a gale. The sacred river Ganga, which flowed from his hair, became a torrent of cosmic energy, washing away the ashes of dead worlds. The sound was no longer just a beat, it was a symphony of annihilation. The roar of collapsing nebulae, the shriek of dying suns, the silent psychic scream of time itself being unmade. It was the ultimate mantra, the sound of Om dissolving back into the silence from which it came. Kashinath felt his own being unravel. His name, his identity, his memories of the sun on his skin, the feel of the earth beneath his feet, they were stripped away, layer by layer. His body, the hermitage, the forest, the planet, the solar system all dissolved into a torrent of vibrating energy, pulled into the maelstrom of the dance. He was no longer an observer. He was a particle of ash in the divine fire, a single, fleeting note in the cosmic song of dissolution. And in that final, terrifying moment of ego death, he understood. This was not the Tandava of destruction. This was the Ananda Tandava, the dance of bliss. A bliss so absolute, so all-consuming, that it required the annihilation of everything to be fully expressed. The final thunderous beat of the Damaru echoed, and then faded. The last flicker of the cosmic flame in Shiva's palm went out. The dance was over. And then, there was silence. It was a silence that dwarfed the predatory quiet that had come before. That had been an absence of sound. This was the presence of nothing. A pure, uncreated, absolute void. There was no light, no darkness, no up, no down. No time, no space. There was only a pregnant emptiness, a state of infinite potential before the first thought of creation. Kashinath was. That was all he knew. He was a point of awareness, a disembodied consciousness floating in the vast, serene ocean of non-being. The rishi, the old man with the white beard and the tired bones, was gone. The name Kashinath was a faint echo, a word whose meaning had been lost. His body, his hut, the river Saraswati, the entire universe he had known all, had been folded back into the source, like a weaver gathering up the threads of a finished tapestry. The crushing weight of ages, the spiritual fatigue of a cosmos in decline, was gone. He felt a profound sense of cleanliness, of purity. It was the feeling of a slate wiped utterly bare, waiting for the first mark. He was untethered from karma, from memory, from form itself. There was no fear. Fear required something to lose, and everything had already been lost. There was no hope. Hope required a future, and time had not yet been reborn. There was only this, the profound peace of the unmanifest. The memory of the dance was all that remained. It was not a visual recollection, but a kinesthetic one. The echo of that terrible, liberating rhythm was imprinted on his very essence. He could still feel the phantom sensation of being torn apart and simultaneously made whole. He understood the terror of the dwarf Apasmara, the crushing weight of divine truth on the back of the ego. He understood the sublime grace of the raised foot, the promise of release from the endless cycle. He had not merely witnessed the Tandava, he had been danced. He was a part of its memory, a ghost of a note in a finished symphony, waiting in the silence for the composer to begin anew. From the absolute center of the absolute silence, a single, primordial vibration emerged. It was not a sound one could hear, but a resonance that bloomed from within the void itself. It was the seed sound, the pranava, It was the first breath of a new cosmos. With the hum, a point of light appeared. It was infinitesimally small, yet contained the entirety of what was to come. It was brighter than a billion suns, yet gentle on the soul's eye. Kashinath, the point of awareness, watched as this singularity, this bindu, began to expand. It did not explode. It unfolded, gracefully, like a lotus of infinite petals. He understood his purpose now. The dance had not simply destroyed him, it had distilled him. He was no longer just Kashinath, a single soul. He was a vessel of Smriti, the living memory of the cosmos that was. He was a seed, a bridge between the last kalpa and the next. As the new universe blossomed, he felt himself being drawn toward it, his consciousness beginning to coalesce around a new, subtle form. The first laws of nature began to precipitate from the quantum foam like dew on a spider's web, the principles of light, of gravity, of time. They were fresh, pure, unburdened by the paradoxes and exceptions that had encrusted the old reality. The first element, hydrogen, helium, began to form, pristine and perfect, their atomic song clear and true. He saw that the Tandava was not an end. It was the universe's ultimate act of self-renewal, a forest fire that clears away the dead undergrowth so that new life can flourish. The arrogant devas he had known were gone, their very concepts burned away. Indra's pride, Kubra's greed, they were ashes, returned to the elemental state. New divinities, new consciousnesses would arise in their place, born of this pristine reality. They would have their own journey, their own choices, their own potential for greatness and for error. The cosmic game, the Lila, was being set up anew. He felt the stirrings of his own form, not the old, frail body, but something else. Something woven from this new starlight and nascent time. He was an anchor point, a memory that would ensure the fundamental truths of dharma, of karma, of moksha were not lost. They would be the bedrock upon which the new worlds would be built. The dance was the most profound act of preservation, for it had preserved not the form but the essence. It was an act of irreversible, compassionate change. Kashinath sat. The ground beneath him felt both newborn and eternal. He opened eyes he did not know he had, and saw a world freshly dreamed into existence. Before him lay a pond of still, clear water, and on its surface a single perfect lotus was unfurling its petals. Each petal held a dewdrop, and in each dewdrop the entire nascent cosmos was reflected. The first sunrise of a new Mahayuga painted the horizon in hues of saffron and rose, colors so pure and vibrant they felt like a form of music. The air was clean, carrying the scent of wet earth, blooming jasmine and possibility. He took a breath, his new lungs filling with the untainted prana of a world without a past. He finally understood the smile on the face of the Nataraja. It was not detachment. It was the deepest, most